Hello everybody, Andrew Blake from the digitalaudiomanual.com. Today we're going to start a series of videos discussing markers in Cubase. But before we start, I want to remind you that there's a link below to the free content navigation guide, which is an easy to navigate web page with links to all the content on this channel. And besides that, in the near future I'm going to begin adding tips and other bits of information that will only be available there. You know, things like simple steps that will get you started and up and running quick. Things that are in the videos but are written down in simple steps that serve as quick reminders when you need information down the road. If you're working with programs like Wavelab or Cubase Plugins or the Cable Guys Shaperbox 2 and many other projects that are in the works, then I know you're going to find, just like I have, that this is an invaluable study aid. And the other thing I want to make sure you understand is that this is not a simple PDF. This is a constantly updated page that has any information that is new, or anytime videos are changed, really anything updated. And once you have it, you will always have the latest information constantly updated. So if you haven't gotten it already, go to the link below, click on it, and save it to your favorites. It's my gift to you, and it's absolutely free. Okay, so let's get started. So, markers. You probably figure you know everything there is to know about them, right? Well, let's see about that. If you don't know what markers are, just in case, they're basically things that allow you to find points, in your song quick. You want to get to the verse, you want to get to the chorus, you want to get to the instrumental. You set up a marker, and then you can navigate to that spot very quickly. But in the latest versions of Cubase, and really for a while now, they've kind of taken markers to a different level. You have the option to put in 10 different marker tracks. And you may think, why would you want that? Well, there's all kinds of reasons, especially depending on what kind of music you're producing. They allow you to bounce and export things depending on the cycle markers you've created. The list really goes on and on with some of the extra features that are now available if you understand how to use markers in your project. So let's start from ground zero, and I have some markers here. I'm going to remove them. And let's go ahead and put a marker track in here. And that's how everything is done, from a marker track. So over here on the left, I'm do a right click and I look down here for add a marker track. Click on this, and we're going to call this position, because these first markers we're going to look at are called position markers. Now, as usual, there's many ways to do the same thing in Cubase, but I'm going to pick a way and then we'll show the other ways as we go. So to start putting markers in, I'm going to right click and select the little pencil tool here. At that point, I can just go to the track and draw by clicking, and it creates a marker. I'm going to create some at all the different sections of my song here. Depending on the resolution, they just snap right to whatever resolution you've set up. So now I have these markers in place. Once you've created some markers, you can go to the marker track, make sure it's selected, and then over on the left zone, it shows you all your markers. And if I click on any of these numbers of the markers, my cursor will move to that spot. So I can quickly move through my project just by clicking on these different marker numbers. So let's say I click on this spot and then I play it. Or I click on this spot and I play it. Wherever I need to go. Again, these are called position markers because they take you to one position on the song. Let's go ahead and create another marker track. And we're going to call this one cycle. Because you guessed it, we're going to create what's called cycle markers. And again, there's many ways to do these, but the first way we're going to talk about is if you select in your tools the range tool, and then select a little range of some kind, and then you go over on the track itself, and there's a little double picture here. It looks like two markers. When you click that, it creates a cycle marker in that range. So I'm going to go and select the different ranges as I go through my sections of my songs. Draw the range, hit the button for create a cycle marker. And then you have these cycle markers. When you double click on a cycle marker, up above it, it automatically sets up the looping area. Any of the section I go to and double click on it, I now have a loop built in automatically. If I hit number 1 on my keyboard, it takes it to the beginning of that, then I can play it. And if I have loop enacted, which I do on my transport, it will just loop around this cycle. Same thing as before, I can use the navigation area over here on the left. Whatever area I click on, it just starts to play there. On the track itself, there's a little drop down that says cycle, and if you click that, it shows you all your cycles, which you can then click on. Go ahead and select that particular cycle for you. Now, there's some other ways to draw these cycle markers. Let's do it this way. I'm going to eliminate one of these. I'll just select it, hit delete. I'll hit this other one, hit delete. Now I can also, instead of just hitting range and doing all that, I can hold control and it turns into a draw tool, and I can just draw in a cycle marker that way as well. I'll draw one there and I'll draw one over here as well. And again, depending on the snap that you've put in place, it'll just snap for you automatically. You can also use the erase tool on your toolbar to erase these markers. If I go up and I just click on it, I erase it. But another nice feature, and I didn't learn this till later on, if I take my range tool over a marker and I select a range, like this marker goes farther than the range is here, but I made a little range in the middle. And if I hit Control X, it cuts a piece out of it and makes two different cycle markers. Another nice thing about the cycle markers, if I go to one of these and I hold Alt and I double click on it, it automatically expands and zooms into that full cycle marker. You can move these cycle markers around very easily. You just click on them and drag them. And each cycle marker has little handles at the bottom. So if you grab one of those handles, you can click and drag that to whatever length you want it to be. One of the absolutely most useful features of these cycle markers that, again, is fairly recent in Cubase is you can use these to export the sections of your songs. For example, in my song, I have an intro and then the verse and the various, sections. So if I go up now to the file and I come down to export and I go to the audio mixdown option, as we look at this big list of all kinds of options, one of the options towards the bottom here is it says export the range, and it gives you an option for locators or cycle markers. And for mine, if I look at the cycle marker list, it shows me that I have 6 different cycle markers here. If I had them labeled, which I'm going to talk about shortly here. Right now they just say 1, 2, 3, 4. If I wanted to bounce out the verse or the chorus or the intro or whatever I needed, I could pick that. It makes it very easy to pick them because you can just select them by checking them, or you can pick the list and just draw it down the list and it selects all of them, and then you can hit one time on the checkbox and it hits all of them. So let's go ahead and export these. I'm going to show you what happens. Now I have everything set up so I can export right into Wavelab. If you have Wavelab, that's another great option that you can use. But watch what happens when I export these. It opens up Wavelab, and then one by one, it brings those cycle markers into Wavelab as individual audio files. So not to go into a big long Wavelab tutorial, but just as you can see, I've been able to bring all these different sections now from the use of bounced markers into Wavelab, which now I can master and render off any section I want, any way I want. And this isn't limited to a full mixdown like this. I could make just as easily separate tracks and various, submixes of bass and drums or whatever I need. Another nice option to know about if you're erasing these markers, and we go back to our erase tool, again, you can just click on something to erase it. But if you hold Alt when you hit erase, it kills everything after the marker you're trying to erase. And it does the same thing on the position markers. If I hold Alt and hit it, all the consecutive markers afterwards got erased. As we go along, we'll look at this a little more in depth, but there's this option to open up this marker window, which gives us some more details on what we're looking at. But in this marker window, we also have a function drop-down list. I'm going to actually move this cursor temporarily over here and get rid of these other markers. So if I go back to this function drop-down, one of the options I have is move the marker to the cursor. So whatever I have selected here will then move over to the cursor. Markers also have lines attached to them, so as you move them, they actually can show the lines of where they are. And if you go and right-click on the marker track and go down to the bottom, it says Show Marker Lines. And right now I've got mine set to off, but if I go over here and I say from the active marker track, that now turns lines on. So wherever I move this marker to, those lines go up and down through the whole project. All right, that's going to wrap it up for today. As usual, if you haven't grabbed your navigation guide, be sure to grab that from the link below. It has links to all the content on the channel, ever growing and free to use. So that should set you off down the path to markers if you've never used them. And if you have, maybe you've picked up a few extra little tips there. I gotta say, the ability to export from cycle markers is just an excellent option, although there are a few more that we're going to explore as we continue here. As always, great to have you guys here. I'll see you in the next video.